we're back live, kind of live. Oh, what a strange turn of events that we have. I don't know. I don't get it sometimes. Super spreader events at Barnegat. I don't know. It's one of those things that just happens, you know? I don't know. It's very strange. But it is what it is. But welcome back. I'm going to give people a few minutes kind of to get in, simply because I believe my laptop says 7:19 and the clock up here says 7:22. So it's a bit difficult to keep that timing right. So like I said, I am going to give people a minute or so kind of just to get in to the live stream so we can get this thing rocking and rolling today. I apologize for using the phrase rocking and rolling. Just one of those things. Anywho, in a moment, I am going to be posting a or a PDF link. Wait, do I want to do that first? No, you know what? I'm not going to do that in a moment. I'm going to save that link. I am going to be posting later on in this class period a PDF link into the Google Classroom stream so that you guys know what problems I'm working on, because I have a bunch of practice problems that I would like you to work on. And this PDF that we are going to be working on is also going to be used for our homework today. Well, I am going to be posting something on Google Classroom as an assignment before I leave the building here today. But yeah, we are going to get some more practice with what we've been working on with voting methods and the violation of criterions. It's going to be fantastic, mainly for me. I don't know about you, but we'll see. This number of people in the live stream keeps fluctuating between one person and 3 people. Just weird to me, but we'll get this thing done. As always, as people have already begun to do so, thank you for leaving me a comment in the chat. That's fantastic. Good morning to all. Yes, there's my good morning serving of some sort. I don't really know. Again, just giving people one extra minute to kind of get into the live stream before we get this thing rolling. Oh, goodness gracious. I stayed up later than I would have wanted to. And then I woke up earlier than I would have wanted to. All the joys of having a young child. But c'est la vie. Okay. Even though I'm going to be walking over here, as I said, I still have the chat live on my phone. So if you do have any questions while we are rolling along with this, by all means, leave those questions in the chat and we will get this thing going. So right now, what I would like to do, I want to pick up with where we left off. Last class, I introduced to you 2 specific criterions that were kind of wordy and kind of weird, and I really wanted to get back into the details of them. And I wanted to give an actual example as to how the certain criterions are violated depending on the circumstances, because it really does depend on the circumstances whether or not a certain voting system could be violated one way or the other. So if you do not already have them out, I'm going to need those notebooks out and open. Yeah, what a Monday. Okay. I'm going to flip my screen over. Let's see here. Boom. And I get this thing open. Ha-boom. Now, like I said, I do have a PDF that I'm going to be posting for you guys soon. There we go. I do have a PDF that I'm going to be posting for you guys soon, but I want to go over something with you first. Okay. Last class, I talked about a certain criterion that could be violated called the independence of irrelevant. Hold on. I am totally blanking. It was the IIA. There it is. Alternatives. Why couldn't I think of the word alternatives? I wanted to think aliases, but it's been a minute. I don't know. But anyway, the independence of irrelevant alternatives criterion. Now, according to our notes, which I do have copies of right here, these are the notes that we took last week. We covered certain criterion, and this was the independence of irrelevant alternatives criterion. Now, we wrote this down last class. So if you already have it written down, good for you. I'm going to move it again in a moment. But basically, if a candidate wins an election and then they do a recount for some reason, I don't know why they would do the recount, but let's just say they do the recount, and a non-winner drops out of the race. Now, okay, Mr. Markey is going to be the governor of New Jersey. I won the election for the governor of New Jersey. Oh no, they have to recount all of the votes? Okay. Oh, the third place guy dropped out of the race. Clearly, that's not going to affect anything. But when they do the recount, all of a sudden, I'm not the winner. Now, assuming that no funny business has happened, assuming that there are no shenanigans, this is a violation of the independence of relevant alternatives criterion. Now, I want to be very clear about something, about these criterion that we covered last week, whether it be the IIA criterion, whether it be the monotonicity criterion. I'm just bringing that back right here. Whether it be, here we go, the Condorcet criterion or the majority criterion. Those four major criterion, which I will go over with you again in due time. But these criterion are what should happen, not what will happen. These criterion, we don't want them to be violated, but there are plenty of examples where they are violated. And by the simple fact that they are violated, just means that these voting systems are flawed. And as I have stated in the past, if you have an election with 3 or more candidates, there is no fair system of voting. The only way that you can be guaranteed a fair winner is if you have the one person get 50% or more of the votes. That's a majority criterion. That typically only happens when you have 2 people. I say typically, because obviously there are situations and circumstances in which, multiple people are running and one person gets 50% of the vote. Good for them. But that doesn't happen all the time. So I do see now that we have 6 people. If you would please leave that comment for me, that would be fantastic. And I'm going to be writing my first example of the day that I would like you guys to copy down. This is voting methods continued. And today is the 8th. Here we go. I have a preference schedule that I would like you guys to write down. I have a preference schedule. It's a little bit larger, but we're going to do this one together. So let's see. It's a little bit larger than the other ones that I've done, but I want you guys to be able to copy this down. Number 1, to get the practice with understanding this preference schedule and utilizing it. But not only that, this example does play a major role moving forward. Let's see here. There's first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice. Across the top, I want you to put the following numbers. There we go. There we go. 2, 4, 6, 1, 1, 4, 4. Now, right off the bat, you don't have any context for this preference schedule. You don't know how the votes fell. You don't know anything about it, other than the fact that you know how many people actually participated in this vote. There were 22 people 22 who participated in the vote, because as what happens with a preference schedule, the numbers across the top indicate how the individual people voted. So 2 people would have voted whatever I'm going to write in here, 6 people voted whatever I'm going to write in here, etc. And then we'll kind of go from there. Now, in terms of who voted what this is going to represent is an NFL team has the number 1 pick in the draft. And this NFL team is trying to figure out what player they are going to draft. There are plenty of choices, but being that they have the number 1 pick in the draft, it's only 1 pick, and whoever they don't pick is most likely going to get picked by preceding teams. So they only get 1 shot at this. So all the coaches, upper management people, 22 people get together and they decide, okay, we have these 5 possible number 1 picks, and we do not know who to vote for. Or vote for, I apologize. We do not know who to pick. Now, we are a team. We are going to evaluate these players, and we are all going to put together a preference ballot on these 5 possible players. Players A, B, C, D, E. And the way that the vote ends up working out, and I'll go through this with you one at a time so you have the opportunity to write these down, because I want you to have this written down. 2 of the coaches / executives vote in the following way. They vote A, D, C, B, E. Move that over a little, avoid the glare. 6 of them vote B, A, C, D, E. You can see player E is not very popular with these 8 votes so far. A is near the top of the pack. Then 4 of them vote in the following way. 4 of them vote B, A, D, E, C. Just to take a pause, there are 5 possible players that you could vote for in this preference schedule. Now, there is a mathematical calculation to figure this out. But if you were to rank in your preference those 5 players, A, B, C, D, E, there would be 120 possible different ways to order them. 120. Thankfully, there's only 22 coaches, and we didn't get 22 different ways to rank them. And you know what? Cream rises to the top. A does look like a good choice so far. I mean, B right now is the sure winner, but let's fill out the rest of the preference ballot. 1 of the coaches voted C, B, A, D, E. 1 of the coaches voted C, D, A, B, E. I got to move that over to avoid the glare, just because I know that the glare is in the way for some people. That should work a little bit better. Four of the coaches voted D, A, E, C, B. And 4 of the coaches voted E, C, D, B, A. Now I'm going to leave that up there so you have an opportunity to copy that down. Yeah, I will leave that up there just for a few moments so you can copy it down. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we see so far. Now remember, there are 22 coaches that are voting. If the vote was plurality, with 22 coaches, yes, 11 votes would be 50% to get a majority, kind of. You would need 50% plus 1. So if you had 22 votes, you would need 12 to get a majority. There is no one up here that has a majority. No one. The plurality, which is just the most first place votes, is going to player B. Player B has 10 first place votes. If you're just looking at first place votes, you're just looking across that first row. A, B, C, D, E. Every player actually received a first place vote. Good for them. It happens. Player B and player A do look to be the most popular ones, except for these like 8 coaches down here who put B all the way. Oh no, 9 actually, who put B all the way down here. C seems to be middle of the pack. Actually, no, C is all over the place. C is here, here, here. That's crazy. But the way that they decided that they were going to vote, because again, the way that we talked about it in class on the first day is whatever voting method they decide, they have to decide beforehand. So, I mean, they could collect this preference ballot. That's great. But before they start counting anything, they have to decide, okay, how are we determining the winner? And the way that these 22 coaches decided that they were going to determine the winner was by head-to-head comparison. Now, head-to-head comparison, we're going to do this together in a moment. I'm going to have to put a little bit on a separate sheet of paper, but now I have this to continually reference back to. I'll give this a title just so I have it referenced in my notes, because this is my concrete notes. I'll give it a title in a moment. But we're going to do this head-to-head comparison together. Now, again, I do see 6 people right there. You can't see it, but I'm pointing to a 6. I do see 6 people in the video, but I only see 3 comments in the chat. I'm going to need those people to comment in the chat so that I know that you are here today. Please make sure that you have done so. I'll give this a title. Player to draft into the NFL. Player to draft into the NFL. That's just what I'm going to be titling it right there. Because who do you vote in? I keep saying vote in, but it's really they decide who they're going to, they vote on who they're going to pick, and then they draft that particular player, and then they have the rights to pay that player big money and win Super Bowls for them or something like that. So now we got to do a head-to-head comparison. Now, in a head-to-head comparison, again, I'm just going to start very simply, very systematically with player A, and I'm going to compare player A to all of the other players. So I'm going to get a separate sheet of paper here, and I'm going to write down here A versus B. There we go. Zoom out just a tiny bit. There we go. I'm going to do A versus B. Now, if I'm going to do A versus B, again, there are 22 coaches and executives voting in this thing. Since there are 22, it is possible that it could be an 11-11 tie. And if it is an 11-11 tie in pairwise comparison, then they do split the point, as we've discussed. So, A versus B. What I'm going to do is this is actually a little bit of a strategy for you. If you're going to be doing a pairwise comparison, if you're going to do player A versus B, I'm going to count the votes that player A beat player B. So hold on. Player A beat player B in 2 votes, in 1 additional vote, so that's 3 total, in 4 additional votes, so that's 7 total, and that's it. Now, I'm trying to do this with a little bit of strategy to make it easier for me to write this stuff down. But player A, according to this, beats player B in only 7 of the votes. And again, player A beat him here, here, and here. That only adds up to 7. Now, being that there are 22 total votes, that must mean that player A was preferred in 7 of those votes, and player B was preferred in 15 of those votes. 7 to 15. This is how easy it can be to compare these players. Now I am going to do A versus C. I'll put this to the side for now. I'll keep my tally over there, and let me keep this little this preference schedule up and viewable so we can see it. You know what? I could even put this down here. Yeah. There we go. And I'm going to keep this little pairwise comparison off to the side so we can see it. Okay. A versus C. And again, all I have to do is just look how many times A was preferred over C. A over C in 2. That adds up to 8. That adds up to 12, which is already majority. C, 16. Yeah, 16. Again, the whole thing should add up to 22. So since player A is preferred in 16 of those ballots, C must have been preferred in 6 of those ballots. All right. Let's move it along a little more here. A versus D. Because the faster that we go with it, or the farther we go along with it, the faster it will end up going. I'll just do it from right here. A over D. A over D in 2. A over D adds up to 8. A over D adds up to 12. A over D adds up to 13. Well, D over A, D over A, D over A. So 13, it's got to add up to 22. 13 to 9. I'll determine the points for pairwise comparison in a little bit. And finally, A versus E. A over E, 2. 6 is 8. Was that 12? 13? 14? It probably would have been better to do the other way around, but 18. And then finally, E. 18 to 4. Here's what I would like you to try. I'm going to lay out for you the rest of the matchups. And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to figure out the head-to-head comparisons for the ones that I'm about to write down. I'm going to put this chart back up here, but hopefully you already have it copied down. But here's what we need to compare. We need to compare, now that we've done all of the A comparisons, we have to do B versus C. We have to do B versus D. We have to do B versus E. Then that would take care of all the B's. Then we got to do C versus D. C versus E. That would take care of all the C's. And then you got to do D versus E. And that would take care of all the D's and E's. You only have to do 6 more of these. So I'm going to do the same thing so that I have similar numbers. I'm going to freeze my screen so that you can't see what I'm writing down. But I want you to take the next couple of minutes, and I want you to do the head-to-head comparisons of the rest of these matchups. So let me move this a little bit so it's not in the glare. There we go. So I'm going to go freeze my screen. Take the next couple of minutes, get this thing done. I'm about to reveal on my screen what I've written down. But what I've written down are the numbers for the comparisons, all the 6 remaining comparisons that we've done. I've also circled the winner of each individual head-to-head comparison. There was one tie. And with that tie, you're actually going to split the vote a half. So you'll see when we actually do these, the tally. I'm going to put the tally down here as to who won the head-to-head comparison. So let's take a look. I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see the exact numbers that we're referring to. Boom, there we go. Zooming in. For BC, it was 10-12. For BD, it was a tie, 11-11. For BE, 14-8. For CD, it was 12-10. For CE, it was 10-12. And for DE, it was 18-4. This is what happens with these head-to-head comparisons. Again, real-life example of head-to-head comparisons. Think of any competition or tournament that has what they call a group round, like the World Cup soccer tournament. You put these 4 teams into a group, and they all play each other once. They do allow for ties, of course, but depending on the head-to-head matchups of all the 4 teams, somebody emerges out of that group. And then the soccer tournament moves on to something else, but that's typically what they do. Soccer loves their little group stages thing. So let's see what happens with this head-to-head comparison. I have to do a little tally chart here. And this tally chart has to take into account all 5 players. So let's see. B, A, C. There was a tie, so I'm going to give B and D a half a point each. Gave a little half there in the corner. B, C, E, D. Nice. So now what ends up happening is, well, A wins. But I do have a follow-up to this, but let's just talk about it for a little bit. A wins. A wins. Good for them. La-di-da. And they kind of move on there. Then something happens. The night before the NFL draft, player C decides, you know what? The NFL's not for me. I'm going to go do something else. And player C drops out. Now, player C is, I'm going to quote this, an irrelevant alternative. Player C is an irrelevant alternative. And they're going to drop out. So the coaches of this NFL team decide, okay, well, we're still going to pick player A, right? So they decide to go back to this preference ballot. Now, they don't re-vote. Let me repeat this. They don't re-vote. They recount because they're not changing any of their preferences. They're not. Instead, like I said, they're just going to, re-vote. Or no, I'm sorry, recount. I'm such an early day right now. I'm so kind of out of it. Now, it seems like not a big deal. So let me write some of this information down just so we have it. Something I just said before was that player C drops out. So player C drops out. The vote is recounted. Again, nobody changes their preference. Nobody changes their preference. But what ends up happening, the head-to-head results are as follows. The head-to-head results are as follows. Now, notice I didn't put C in there. A ends up getting these 2 votes. B ends up getting this 2.5. D has 1.5. And E has nothing. Now, I'm going to talk about why that is in a moment because I want to go back to this head-to-head comparison. But when C drops out, all of a sudden, now B wins. IIA violated. The independence of irrelevant alternatives is now violated. Nobody changed their preference at all. I'm going to talk about why this is. I didn't want to have to redo everything in the preference chart. But I'm going to talk about why that is in a moment. But it happened. Originally, A was the clear winner. And then C dropped out. And now B is the winner. Oops. Who do they draft? Who do they draft? Player A or player B? I don't know at this point. They don't know at this point. They're going to have to figure a way out. But C was irrelevant, an irrelevant alternative, and dropped out and changed the vote. Why is that? Look what we got here. This was the original vote. This was the original vote. And A had 3 victories more than everybody else. So A was the pick. But then C dropped out. C gave A one of those victories. So clearly A lost that victory. C had a victory. But now that victory is gone. Player B had beaten player A, had tied player D, and had beaten player E. Though that point total does not change. Player B stays at 2.5 points. But player A, as a result, their victories were over C, D, and E, now dropped down to 2. That is why that happened. Oh, Ms. Markey, something must be wrong with the voting system. Yes, because any voting system with 3 or more candidates is flawed automatically. There is no perfect voting system for 3 or more candidates. There isn't. It's insane to think of that, but that's the truth. That's part of the reason why when we vote for president, they try to do a 2-party system. They try. Because when you have a 2-party system, you're more likely than not going to have somebody with 50% of the vote. But in America, we can vote for whoever we want. Now, it just so happened that in the 2020 election, that Joe Biden did get over 50% of the vote. He did. In the 2016 election, neither Hillary Clinton nor Donald Trump had over 50% of the vote. Neither one of them did. If you force it to be 2 choices, then yeah, you should have 50% of the vote for one of the candidates. 50% or more. You should. But that's not how life works. There's always more than 2 choices. There's always more than 2 choices. Okay. I'm going to post into the Google Classroom a worksheet that I have been waiting to post for a while. Add Google Drive. Come on, little thing. There you are. PDF for today. And homework. Post. So I just posted this PDF. It should be reaching you in a few moments. Now I do say and homework. I have not assigned the homework yet, but I am going to assign the homework before I leave the building here today, and I am going to assign it through Google Classroom. So you will know exactly what problem numbers you will be responsible for. But in the meantime, I want to get a little extra practice with some of the voting methods that we have been doing. We have been focusing for the past several class periods on just 4 voting methods: plurality, board account, head-to-head comparison, and plurality with elimination. And I just want to jump around a little bit on this PDF and actually get the appropriate practice that we need to get. So let me open up this PDF and I'll talk about where we're going to go with this. I would like to write some of the work that is involved with this into our notes, of course. And we'll get this thing rolling. So let's see. First, on the PDF that I copied for you, I would like to start with number 14. So let's see. I'll have to jump back and forth a little bit. Opening this up, Lumen PDF. Come on, you thing, connect to the Google Drive. Apparently, why did it sign me out? Silly thing, you. Okay, it'll take forever to load. And I'm looking at number 14. There we go. And of course, if it's difficult to see on the board, you already have the PDF. But it says an election with 4 candidates and 150 voters is to be decided using plurality. Again, plurality, most votes wins. After 120 ballots have been recorded, A has 26, B has 18, C has 42, and D has 34. What is the smallest number of the remaining 30 votes that B must receive to guarantee a win for B? Well, let's think about this logically. Let me go to my notes right here. This is example number 14. And let me do a little chart here of the votes so far. It says that A has 26, B has 18, C has 42, and D has 34. And there are 30 votes remaining. There are 30 votes remaining. Click. There we go. Now, there's 2 parts to this question, A and B. And the first part is, well, how about what if B wins? What does B have to do in order to win? Well, right now, as the count stands, right now, C looks to be in the lead. But of course, there are 30 votes remaining. There are 30 votes remaining. Now, obviously, if B received all of those 30 votes, then B would be at 48 and B would be the winner. Yay! But that's not what the question's asking. The question is asking, what is the smallest number of the remaining votes that B must receive in order to guarantee a victory? And then it says to explain. Well, the explanation can be done a little bit in the math. The assumption is, okay, B has to get a lot of those 30 votes in order to catch up. A lot. Okay. Obviously, if all 30 went to B, B would be at 48. If one of those votes didn't go for B, let's assume that it went to C. So instead of 48 votes, if it was 47, then one of those extra votes would have gone to C to be at 43. Could have also been 46 to 44 or 45 to 45. Now, that is a possibility. You could do a tie between the two, but then, oops, you wouldn't have a definitive winner. It has to guarantee that B is the winner. So to get 45-45, it would be 27 here, 3 here. But sorry, a tie is not going to do it. 27 votes would give the possibility of a tie, but 28 additional votes would guarantee be the winner. What is the smallest number of the remaining 30 votes that B must receive in order to guarantee a victory? And again, it's just a matter of divvying up those 30 votes between B and the top candidate, the leader at this point. If B gets 28, there's no way that C can catch up. If B gets 28, then B would have 46 total versus, well, the 2 remaining votes, 44 total. B would win 46-44. Again, if it was 1 less vote at 27, there's the possibility of a tie. Can't do it. So this is part A. Part B, and again, probably write a sentence or so to explain exactly what I'm referring to. But hopefully that will be a bit more obvious with part B, because I will explain what I'm talking about. In part B, they want to know, okay, same thing, except what if D is the winner? Same thing, except what if D is the winner? Okay, well, again, let's do the comparison. D is facing C. D right now is behind by 6, 7, 8. Is behind by 8 votes. Is behind by 8 votes. Okay. So they have to overcome an 8-vote margin, breaking up the 30 votes. Okay. Let me kind of write out my thoughts a little bit on this problem so far. So D is losing 42-34, which is by 8 votes, with 30 votes remaining. If D were to make up those 8 votes over C, then they could possibly be in a tie. But in order to guarantee that D is the winner, D has to have a clear victory, has to have a plurality. So of the 30 remaining votes, how do we split them up? 15 and 15 will definitely not do it. 20-10 would make up 10 votes. 19-11 would make up 9 votes. No, 19-11 make up 8 votes. Would 19-11 make it a tie? Let's see. What if D got those 19 votes, and what if C got those 11 votes? I'm going to add those votes to the total right here. We got 53-53. Oh, snap, there's a tie. If you go 19-11 with those remaining votes, D has made up the 8 votes, but there's a tie. Logically, and that's what this class is filled with, a lot of logic. If D gets 19 votes, there's still the possibility of a tie. So D must have 20 votes of the remaining 30 in order to win. This is the logical progression that we're trying to make. You try out a few situations with these numbers. It's a little easier to grasp because these numbers are definitely countable. Try out a few situations, see what logically makes sense. This class is filled with a lot of logic. Not the type of logic that you do in like geometry or something like that, but just things that make sense because they're graspable numbers. They're countable numbers. They're discrete numbers. Let's try another one. try another one from this little packet of information that I have right here. Let's jump. Oh, sweet. Yeah. Let's jump to number 19. Number 19. Now, number 19 kind of covers a couple of columns, but we'll get there. It's on the next page. Number 19 starts at the bottom right there, and then I'm going to scroll up to the rest of the problem. Number 19. The editorial board of Gourmet Magazine is having an election to choose the restaurant of the year. The candidates are Andres, Berselli's, Casablanca's, Dante. I'll scroll up here. And escargot. I learned as a child that escargot is French for snails. Anyway, the preference schedule for the election is given in the following table. Cool. Then, part A is asking for you to find the winner under the board account method. Now, if you happen to remember the board account method, it means that for every first place vote that you receive, you get a certain number of points. Every second place vote that you receive a little less points, and then it goes from there. We don't have to label it like this, but I would for the sake of simplicity. My marker. Oh, there it is. There's the orange one. There we go. For the sake of simplicity, the way that you can work it out is, well, a last place vote, you could say, is worth 1 point. A fourth place, 2, 3, 4, and 5 points. You could label it like that. That's the easiest, most straightforward way to label the point values for board account. You give last place 1 point and work your way up to the top. And we have to figure out point totals for all 5 candidates. Now, I'm going to go back to my page in a moment, but I am going to be referencing this table, which you have in a PDF file now on your computer. Well, let's see how this works out. So if I was going to figure out the point total for all of these, first, I would start with A. A is the easiest one to go about it. Now, I'm going to leave this up on the board for a moment, and I'm going to write something on my paper here. For A, clearly there were 8 first place votes. There were, if you total it there, I'll bring the mouse over the top of it right here. A had 3 second place votes because there were 2 ballots and 1 ballot that put A in second place. 3 second place votes. There were 7 third place votes. There were no fourth place votes. And there were 6 last place votes. Now I'm going to flip my camera over in a moment just to show you something here. Chapow! Look at that. Now I filled it in for all of the places. Even the fourth place ballots, which the fourth place ballots got you nothing because there were no fourth place votes for A. But I put it in there just for the sake of consistency. 8 first place, because we said that first place was worth 5 points. 3 second, 7 third, 0 fourth, and 6 last place votes. And then we can figure out a point total for A. This is how board account is done. You figure out the point total for all the candidates, and then you go with it, then run with it. Like, just who has the most points? Well, I'll just do this real quick. Boom. A had 79 points. And then they go from there and they do B, C, D, and E. Well, let's go with B. Now, I'll shorten it up a bit. B did not receive any first place votes. B had, 21 second place votes, 2 third place votes, 1 fourth place vote and no last place votes. So I don't have to, I'm just going to leave them blank for the time being. Let's figure that out. Boom, 92. Automatically, B is much more highly coveted than A, even though A had 8 first place votes and B had none. B still had a higher point total because B had a lot of second place votes. So let's see. C had 2 first place, no second, 8 third place, 13 fourth place, and 1 last place. $10, $24, $26, and $1, 61 points. Sorry, C, you suck. Let's go with D. D had, ooh, nice, 13 first place votes, no second, 1 third, ooh, 15, 16, 17 fourth place votes. Let's figure that junk out. Oh, interesting. Because of the 13 first place votes, D had 102 points. Interesting. This is building up to something. Let's look at E. E had 1 first place vote, no second, 6 third place votes, 15, 16, 17 last place votes. I got to count something here in a minute. I got to double check one thing. Because I think I misrepresented something. Well, E had 40 points right there. Let me double check B real quick. Yeah, let me check C real quick. Yeah, okay. Yeah, 102. There we go. Good. So who is the winner? D. D wins. I forgot what restaurant that is, but D wins. Good for them. Now, the question on the paper is kind of throwing me a little bit for a loop. Because the question on the paper is then asking, why does this violate the majority criterion? Why does this violate the majority criterion? Because I'm fairly certain we did everything correctly. The majority criterion is, well, if somebody receives a majority of the first place votes, then they should be the winner. Oh, did I miscount something? There is a possibility that I miscounted something. Yeah, I'm pretty certain I miscounted something. Let's go back. I'm pretty sure I messed up B. I'm pretty sure I messed up B. Let me double check this. Okay. How did I mess up B? No, I'm pretty sure I got B correctly. There were 21 second place votes. There were 2 third place votes. And there was 1 fourth place vote for B. I'm looking at B. Oh, I see what I did. I messed up D. Let me go back to D real quick. I did mess up D. Yep, I miscounted D. It wasn't 17. D had 10 right here. I'll leave my marker kind of pointing where it should be right there. And I'm going to cross out this 102. I do apologize for this. I misread one number and that messed me up right there. That number right there should be a 10. And as a result, yep, D had 88, which means B wins. This is what I wanted to talk about before we finished up today. I do apologize for messing up that one number on this entire page. Makes me sad and cry a little bit on the inside. But this number right here should have been a 10, which changes D's board account to 88. As a result, B wins. Now, this is why I wanted to focus on the majority criterion. This is why I chose this problem. They decided that they were going to vote via the board account. That's what they decided upon. That is how they determined their winner. But D had 13 first place votes. 13. How many first place votes were there? Oh, there were 24. There were 24 restaurants voting, 24 votes that went into this. 24. And if 24 votes are going into this, if you want to get a majority, then you got to get 50% plus 1, which D got. D has more than 50% of the vote. But B wins the board account. This violates the majority criterion. Man, it's almost as if these criterions, like they're just meant to be broken. Yeah, especially if you have 3 or more candidates. You are going to get the practice with all 4 methods on the homework that I'm going to assign you. As I've stated, I see 6 people in the chat, but I only see 3 comments. If you haven't left a comment, please make sure you leave a comment so I can wave goodbye to you as the bell is about to ring. Have a wonderful day. I will see you guys another time. Still, I'm going to hang out here for a minute or two waiting for those people to leave my comments. But otherwise, the rest of you can take your things and move on to your next class period. I think they're all still just hanging out. Okay. All right, I'm going to sign off then. Still waiting on those people to comment, but they haven't. So when I sign off, they lose their opportunity. Okay.